about 20 to 30 minutes talking about the topic that we advertise specifically about resilience. And in today's world, many challenges, stress levels skyrocketing. What do we do about that? Or more specifically, what can the science of happiness teach us about that? And after my brief presentation, we will turn to a short video, 5 minutes, where Yuval Kutz, who is the president of the Happiness Studies Academy, will talk about the structure of the certificate in happiness studies. Then one of our graduates of the certificate program, Kati Quartas, will talk about how she's applying happiness studies in her career. And then we'll open up for your questions, and your questions can revolve around my presentation. They can revolve around the certificate in happiness studies or any other question that you may have related in some way to well-being. So that's the structure of today. So let me begin by introducing the field of happiness studies. So in 2015, over 10 years ago, I was on a transatlantic flight. And you know those flights when you are very uncomfortable and very tired? Too uncomfortable to fall asleep and too tired, at least for me, to do anything. So I was just sitting there being uncomfortable when a question came to mind. And the question was, how is it that there is a field of study for biology and psychology and history and medicine and education and business and anthropology, and the list goes on. And yet there is no field of study for happiness. Yes, there is positive psychology, but that's just the psychology of happiness. What about what philosophers like Lao Tzu or Aristotle had to say about happiness? What about what theologians had to say, or religion in general has to say about happiness? What about what neuroscientists or economists or historians have to say about happiness? Why isn't there a field, or rather an interdisciplinary field of study that brings together all these areas to shed light on one of life's most important questions? And it was on that flight, being very uncomfortable, that I resolved to help create a field of happiness studies. And I haven't stopped working since, again, over 10 years ago. So we put together a curriculum for a certificate in happiness studies. This was our first product, so to speak. You're going to be introduced to it today. A few years later, so this was 3.5 years ago, we launched the world's first master's degree in happiness studies. And just, what was it? 3 months ago, we launched the world's first PhD in happiness studies. The field as a whole, whether we're talking about the certificate, whether we're talking about the master's program, whether we're talking about the PhD, all revolve around our model of happiness, which we have named SPIRE. The SPIRE model, SPIRE is an acronym, stands for spiritual well-being. Spiritual well-being is about finding a sense of meaning and purpose. It's about being present, mindful in the here and now. Yes, of course, we can experience spirituality through religion, in a house of prayer. At the same time, we can also experience spirituality when we do something that is important to us, significant, something meaningful, something purposeful. We also experience spirituality when we're being present. And when we're being present, it could be while uttering a prayer. It could also be while learning something new, reading a book, or working on an Excel sheet. Being present in the here and now is a form of spirituality. Physical well-being, the P of SPIRE, is about physical exercise. It's about nutrition. It's about sleep. And there's a lot of research connecting the mind to the body, showing how when we eat more healthfully, when we exercise regularly, we don't just become physically healthier, we also become mentally, emotionally better off. So we have the S, spiritual, the P, physical. The I of Spire is about intellectual well-being. Intellectual well-being is about curiosity. It's about asking questions. Do you know that people who are curious, who ask questions, actually live longer, all other things being equal? So curiosity may kill the cat. It helps us live longer and happier. Intellectual well-being is also about deep learning, engaging with text or with art or with nature. Contributes significantly to overall happiness. The R of Spire stands for the number one predictor of happiness: relationships. Relationships that could be romantic relationships, it could be colleagues at work, it could be family, it could be friends. We're social animals. We need those relationships. They're important for psychological well-being. They're also important for physical health. Kindness, generosity is an important, of course, part of relational well-being. And finally, we get to the E of Spire. And E, it stands for emotional well-being. And emotional well-being is about cultivating pleasurable emotions like joy, like gratitude, like love, like curiosity or interest or fun. Emotional well-being, though, is also about the ability to better deal with, handle painful emotions, difficulties, hardships. And this is what I want to elaborate on today. So, our topic today is resilience in challenging times. What can the science of happiness teach us? And the answer, in one word, a lot. The science of happiness can teach us a great deal, not just in terms of raising our levels of happiness, but also learning to deal with painful emotions, to deal with challenges, hardships, difficulties. I want to begin talking about this by sharing an interesting story with you that talks about resilience. So I don't know how many of you have heard of Biosphere 2. Biosphere 2. Biosphere 1 is Earth, our world. What is a biosphere? A biosphere is a closed, enclosed system that is, by and large, self-contained, that has all that it needs for surviving and thriving. I mean, think about Earth. We are, other than, sunlight coming in and, once in a while, maybe a meteor or something from space, by and large, it's a closed system. And this closed system is self-contained. So it has an ingenious ability to sustain itself so that there is pollution and the trees clean up this pollution. Now, these days we're pushing it, right? We're not taking care of our biosphere. But in general, this system, Biosphere 1, Earth, has the capacity to sustain itself. There is rain, there is recycling of the pollution, there are plants, there are animals working in synchrony. So that's Biosphere 1. What's Biosphere 2? This is a man-made structure, the desert of Arizona, trying to simulate Earth. So it's a huge dome, enclosed system with plants in it, with water in it, with an ecosystem in it, all designed in order to be self-sustaining. Why did they create Biosphere 2? They spent millions and billions on it. Why? Because they were thinking about um, colonizing other planets. Because imagine if on the moon or Mars, you could actually put a biosphere and have people live there. And the biosphere, the system, can sustain life, whether it's recycling the water, the air, and so on. So the experiment overall failed. Even though they closed it up again, except for sunlight coming in, they closed it up so no oxygen could come in. And every year it lost a little bit of oxygen. But again, a little bit over many years becomes a lot. So it wasn't self-sustaining. However, they learned a great deal from this experiment, and maybe Biosphere 7 will work and we'll be able to put one such structure or a few such structures on other planets. Who knows? But I want to share with you a particular study or a finding from Biosphere 2. So one of the things that they needed, obviously, were trees. Because what do trees do? Trees are able to take carbon dioxide and purify the air and turn it into oxygen. Use the carbon dioxide to grow. That's what trees do. That's why we call, I don't know, New York, just around the corner, the Central Park West or Central Park as the lung of New York. Or the forests of Brazil are so important in purifying the air. Again, we're pushing it as human beings, which is unfortunate, but that's another story, another discussion. So they planted trees, and here is what happened. They planted the trees, they watered them, they fertilized them, and the trees grew. Wonderful. And then they grew some more, and some more. And when a tree got to a specific height, it wasn't that tall, but a specific height, it broke, it fell over. And they planted the next tree, the next few trees, and the exact same thing happened. Reaching that height, it broke, fell over, wasn't able to sustain itself, its own weight. So they changed the amount of water that they gave it. They gave it less, and then more. And then they changed the fertilizer. It didn't matter. The tree got to a certain height, and then boom, fell over. Wasn't able to sustain its own weight. They didn't understand why until they did. What happened on Biosphere 2? What was the problem that led these trees to fall, to break? The problem was that on Biosphere 2, there is no wind. So it turns out that trees that are exposed to the wind are challenged. And what happens when the trees are challenged? They actually become stronger. And because these trees were not challenged, because they were able to just grow without the wind, they did not grow stronger, strong enough to sustain even their own weight. Now think about what an important metaphor this is for humans. This idea that we need to be challenged in order to grow stronger, that we need to be challenged in order to cultivate resilience, is critical for our physical as well as psychological well-being. Think about the physical well-being. You go to the gym and all the weights are on zero. Do you grow stronger? Of course not. You're wasting your time. You need to be challenged, just like the trees are challenged when there is wind. You need to be challenged in order to grow stronger. In other words, more physically resilient. Or think about another physiological example. Imagine you take a newborn baby, and in order to protect it, you put it in a bubble that is completely sterile. No germs come in. And you keep that baby there for 2 years because you want to protect the baby from germs, from sickness. What happens if after 2 years you take that baby out to the real world? That baby in all likelihood will die. Why? Because we need to be challenged in order to cultivate resilience. I mean, what is resilience? Resilience is the psychological immune system. And how do we become immune to something? By being exposed to it. By being exposed to it to the right degree. Because of course, you can have a tree and then a hurricane comes over and, it destroys the tree. Or you go to the gym and you lift too many weights, you get injured. So we need to think about quantity, amount of challenge. But the fact remains that we need challenge. Trees need challenge. All living things need to be challenged. If they are to grow, if they are to cultivate resilience, if they are to remain healthy. So this is the way we cultivate resilience. The question is, how do we maximize our potential for cultivating psychological resilience? And here, I want to share with you a study that was run recently by two researchers, Woolley and Fischbach, showing the right approach, the healthy approach to exiting our comfort zone. Because being challenged means, by definition, exiting our comfort zone. If it's comfortable for me to just go like this with no weights, I want to grow stronger, I need to put weights that are heavy enough, challenging enough for me to be at least slightly uncomfortable. The same applies psychologically. So being in our comfort zone does not lead to growth. Exiting our comfort zone does. So the researchers, Woolley and Fischbach, did the following study. They had participants go into potentially challenging activities, such as participating in improv theater. Improvisational theater is challenging. You're in front of people, you very often make a fool out of yourself, you have to come up with ideas quickly under pressure. It's challenging for most people. And they asked them, before engaging in their improv practice, they asked them to look for, embrace discomfort. Why? Because they said to them, it's through discomfort that we grow and learn. So they changed their mindset about discomfort rather than their mindset being, how can I avoid this discomfort? Or how can I feel comfortable even in front of an audience? No, don't worry about being uncomfortable. In fact, embrace it. And what happened as a result of it? As a result of it, those individuals whose mindset was changed compared to a control group who just went on stage, those for whom their mindset was changed actually learned more, actually put themselves on the line more, actually got more out of the challenging experience. I want to read to you what they said about what they wrote about the study, and then some words from the researchers. Ultimately, the researchers found that people who aimed to be uncomfortable were more engaged in their activities, felt more motivated to keep doing them, and believed they made more progress toward their goals compared to those who weren't seeking out this kind of vulnerability. For example, improv students spend more time in the spotlight on stage and did wackier things. And then the researchers write, growing is often uncomfortable. We found that embracing discomfort can be motivating. People should seek the discomfort inherent in growth as a sign of progress instead of avoiding it. Look at discomfort as a sign of progress rather than seeking to avoid it. Going back to our topic, you want to cultivate resilience? Put yourself on the line. Challenge yourself while recognizing that what you're doing is building resilience, is growing. And again, whether you're growing muscles or growing brain power or psychological strength, resilience, you need to get out of the comfort zone. In other words, the goal is as much as possible for us to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Growth comes, or our potential for growth is realized, when we are able to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And there are no shortcuts in terms of how we do it. Yes, start with that mindset that the researchers were talking about, look for it, embrace it, then do it. Engage in those activities. Just like the gym, it's not enough to understand how our muscles work. We need to go out and lift weights. In the same way, we need to go out and be uncomfortable. And if we want to derive the maximum benefit from these uncomfortable situations, then we need to embrace them, look for them, celebrate them, realize that these are opportunities for potential growth. Now, I want to share with you a funny, but I must say endearing conversation that I often have with my youngest students. So, I also teach on college campus, and this especially comes from the 18-year-olds. And so they were taking my class, and about a month into the semester, they would come to me, and this has happened a few times with quite a few young students. They would come to me and say something to the effect of, Professor, I really love positive psychology or happiness studies or whatever I'm teaching. And in fact, I'm thinking of majoring in psychology. In fact, I'm thinking of maybe graduate school. So they have their life planned already. And then they would say to me something like, Professor, I'm really concerned. And I would say, how come? They would say, well, I'm really concerned that, you talk about how important it is to experience hardships and difficulties and challenges, psychological challenges, that is. And but I'm concerned, they say, because what if I become so good at positive psychology or so good in happiness studies that I no longer will experience those hardships and difficulties and challenges? And my response to them is always the same. I always say to them, don't worry. Life will take care of you. Life always takes care of us. These difficult experiences, they are inevitable. The challenges are inevitable. The question is, what do we do with them? Do we embrace them? Do we look at them as growth opportunities? Or do we do everything in our power to avoid them? Or when they happen, we move away as much as possible. And it's a mistake to do so. Let me go on a little tangent and then come back to our main topic. Now, my research, my dissertation work, my PhD, was on self-esteem. And there's a lot of research on self-esteem because it turns out that self-esteem matters. It's important for happiness, it's important for health, it's important for success, it's important for many things. Most people believe that self-esteem is cultivated, comes from successes, meaning, or from perception of success, which is why teachers and parents so often advocate giving positive feedback as a way to raise self-esteem. It turns out that giving positive feedback feels nice. I mean, who doesn't like hearing that they're good or effective or nice or smart? We all like it. But it turns out to be not so effective as far as raising self-esteem is concerned. What is effective in terms of raising self-esteem? It's coping, putting ourselves on the line, trying, doing things and failing, getting up and doing them again. That's what coping means. As opposed to, and this is what leads to low self-esteem, avoidance, running away from challenges. What is a strong what's strong self-esteem? It means a strong psychological immune system. It means being resilient. The correlation, the connection between self-esteem and resilience is extremely high. They're not identical. They're very similar phenomena. So in order to enhance resilience, two things. Put ourselves on the line, look for those challenging experiences. And again, for you, it may be improv, or it may be deciding to write a book, or it may be having a difficult conversation with someone, or it may be keeping a journal and looking inside, and that sometimes hurts. Or it may be deciding to learn a new language. No matter how old you are, challenging yourself. And not only putting yourself in these positions, but when you're in these positions, recognizing the value of what you're doing. So going in with the mindset of, I want to be challenged. I'm looking for hardships. Just like in the gym, you would look for challenges and hardships in order to grow. I want to take this a little bit broader, because this idea of entering a situation with a certain mindset is a very important part of the field of psychology as a whole, and of positive psychology in particular. The mindset that we take on when we enter an activity can affect the entire activity, the entire experience. For example, there's research by Joe Tomaka, that's Tomaka, Joe Tomaka, who identified individuals who are or experience test anxiety. Now, over 50% of the people in the world, I'm no exception, experience test anxiety. And he divided those people randomly into two groups. One group, go and take the test. The second group, just before taking the test, they were told the following: look at the test as a challenge. Look at the test as a challenge. In other words, he changed their mindset from seeing the test as a threat, which is what most people with test anxiety do. That's how they look. This is the mindset that they have when entering a test situation. So rather than as a threat, he told those in the intervention group to look at the test as a challenge. In other words, an opportunity to learn. Just that one word, challenge, as opposed to threat. Change their mindset and their biology. and their chemistry. Specifically, these individuals were less stressed, released less cortisol, which is the stress hormone, were calmer while taking the test just because of one word, and they performed better as a result. Let me give you another example of how reframing an experience matters. Again, this is going off a little bit on a tangent. I'll come back to resilience in a second. So, research from Stanford did the following with people. They gave them a game that they asked them to play. Now, this game, when you played it, you could strive to beat the other person, to do better than others, to put them down, to win, so that they would lose. This is one way of playing it. Another way of playing the exact same game is through collaboration, coming up with a win-win for all participants. Both approaches are possible, as accessible. Half of the participants were told about this game, and they said, we want you to play this game. This is a Wall Street game. Wall Street game. The other half of the players, again, independent from the first half, the other half of the players were told, we want you to play this game. This is a community game. So one group was told this is a Wall Street game. The second group, playing the exact same game, was simply told it's called the community game. Now, what do we associate with Wall Street? Competition, cutthroat competition. There are winners or losers. You're in the red or in the black. What do we associate with community? Collaboration, working together, common goal. And indeed, those who were told that the game is called Wall Street game actually competed with one another. Win or lose, they did everything that they could do to be on top and for the others to be on the bottom. Cutthroat competition. Those in the community game were significantly more likely to collaborate, to work together. Why? One word that got the participants to frame the situation. I want to give you another example of the importance of framing. Think about the military. There are people who volunteer for the Marine Corps. Now, what they go through in the basic training for the Marine Corps or other elite units, Navy SEALs, God help us. And yet they go through it willingly, with motivation, just fighting to get through. Now, if you forced someone to go through that experience, it would be nothing short of abuse. But even though you're doing physically the exact same thing, the mindset is very different. Here, I'm going to do this. It's meaningful to me. It's a challenge. It's something I want to do. The mindset going in is very different than someone who is forced to go through the exact same physical pain that the Marines go through. Different mindset, very different experience. How we frame the situation matters. There's research in psychology showing that whether you see your work as a job, something that you have to do, as a career, something that you really want to progress on and succeed in, or as a calling, this is something that I believe in. It's meaningful, it's purposeful. Just the way you frame your work affects your overall experience and your overall long-term success. And the same work can be described by different people, or even by the same person at different times, as either a job or a career or a calling. How we frame it can make all the difference. Going back to resilience and to our stressful modern life. There's a wonderful TED lecture that I really recommend you watch if you haven't seen it yet, by Kelly McGonigal on stress. Kelly McGonigal from Stanford reports on research that shows how significant it is to see stress as a friend. And what she shows, and what research by her colleague Alia Crum shows, is that when we frame stress as helpful, as a friend, as potentially a growth experience, because remember, in the gym, we need the stress to grow. The trees need the stress to become strong. We need psychological stress in order to become resilient. When you frame stress as potentially helpful, just that framing in and of itself changes the effect that stress has on us. And we actually, all other things being equal, will live longer, not to mention better, if we see stress as a friend rather than as a foe, as helpful rather than as harmful, to the right degree and the right extent. Remember, a hurricane will destroy the tree. Too much wind is not good. In the gym, too much weight will injure you. So our goal is to navigate, to find the right amount, the right activities that for us will bring about the growth that can only come through hardships and challenges. So this is a brief introduction to resilience, changing our mindset, how we frame the situation, and then looking for experiences that are challenging, that take us out of the comfort zone. And these two together, the mindset and the experience, can lead us to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is the foundation of a healthy, resilient, happy life. Right. I'm happy to answer, of course, questions after in about 10 or 15 minutes. But before we get to questions, and again, your questions can be about the certificate program, or they can be about what I just spoke about, or any other topic that is of interest to you. Before that, I would like to show you a video by Yuval Kutz, the president of the Happiness Studies Academy. Here he is talking about the year-long certificate program.
Hello everyone. I'm so glad that you're here with us today, and I want to thank you for your interest in the Happiness Studies Academy and our incredible community. Our global network of students and graduates are eager to welcome each and every one of you. At the Happiness Studies Academy, HSA, we offer fully online programs, including the world's first accredited master's degree in happiness studies and even a PhD in human flourishing. But today, I'm going to talk about our flagship program, the Certificate in Happiness Studies. This program has become the cornerstone of our academy. It has brought together thousands of students from around the globe who've not only learned about happiness, but have formed friendships, started businesses, and truly embraced what we call the happiness revolution. One of our students put it perfectly when she said, "Anywhere I go in the world, I always have a place to stay." This speaks to the deepest connections and sense of belonging that our community fosters. The certificate program is a year-long online journey that blends theory and practice. You will dive deep into our SPIRE model, covering spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional well-being. You will explore research-based insights and practical techniques that you can apply in a personal, communal, or professional way. The course has a weekly structure with three main components. The first component is pre-recorded lectures. These are delivered by Dr. Ben-Shahar, who will guide you through the science and wisdom behind happiness. You will travel through different cultures and times, learning what the great thinkers of the world in the fields of psychology, neuroscience, arts, economics, and more have to say about living well. The second component is the weekly exercises and the educational content. We believe that happiness, like any other skill, requires practice. These exercises are designed to help you apply what you learn in a way that's meaningful and is transformative for you. The third component is the live sessions with Tal.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Every week we gather from all over the world for a 1.5 hour session with Tal. It's a time for sharing, learning, and connecting.
Wow, that's amazing.
We're also proud to offer this program in multiple languages: English, Chinese, French, Hebrew, Japanese, Portuguese, Spanish, and Vietnamese, so that it's accessible to as many people as possible.
HSA is not a certificate program. HSA is a community.
I signed up for the material, and the teacher, obviously world renowned and wonderful. What I didn't realize is that I was going to get a community that is so wonderful.
You also automatically become a member of our Alumni and Business Club, ABC. The ABC is a thriving network where you will receive mentorship, participate in specialized working groups, access business opportunities, join in-person events, and get access to the highlight of the year, our biannual in-person retreats in different locations around the world, where we learn, grow, dance, and get to know each other better. Most importantly, when you enroll, you get lifetime access to everything I just mentioned: the lectures, exercises, the most comprehensive bibliography on happiness available today, invitations to weekly live sessions with Tal, and more. Once you graduate, you will receive a certificate recognizing you as an HSA certified happiness trainer, so that you are ready to share what you've learned and help others on their own path to improving their overall well-being. Thank you once again for being here. I look forward to our journey together.
So you'll have an opportunity in a few minutes to ask questions about the certificate program. But now I'd like to call on a dear friend and fellow journeyer, Kati Cuartas. Hi, Kati.
Hi, Tal. Hi,
Wonderful to
everyone.
see you.
Wonderful to see you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here and to share a little bit about my journey with you all. I graduated on 2021 from the Certificate in Happiness Studies program. And my relationship with the topic we study here goes much further back. For more than 18 years, I've been a coach and facilitator, focusing mainly in human behavior, well-being, and how art and spirituality are related to all of this. However, before the certificate, I felt navigating without any solid map, any structure or support. I was like all by myself, trying to connect things and doing my work. So over time, in my work, but also in my own life, I began to see those connections between nutrition and posture. I mean, in my clients or in my own life, and how everything was related. But still, I didn't always feel confident combining those disciplines in my work, in my professional work. I always ask myself if that was like appropriate to recommend a book of philosophy to a client, or talking about blue zones or meditation. You know, I was like, let's just stick to the real thing and not combine anything. So that's why finding HSA felt like a hitting the jackpot for me. Like everything got into place, like everything makes sense. You know, like everything was like, hey, it's correct. Everything is interconnected. So that's why I found here my like a clear framework, like the science-based interconnection between different areas of knowledge. That was truly amazing for me, and finding practical tools that I use in my own life, and also uh, in my work, in the transformation of the people that I accompany. So the truly transformation in my work, I think it's like discovering the SPIRE model. I cannot say enough about the SPIRE model, how that's my map, that's my structure. Today, that structure is what I teach and I work with, because it really reflects for me how we are as human beings. So everything is in there, everything is connected. I don't have to look anywhere else. That the SPIRE model. Also, of course, the professor and the community have both Tal and our fellow journalists. It has been a cornerstone on my professional growth. Having that group to return to think together, to do collaborations, to inspire, to be inspired by. We are like like-hearted, like-minded people, and that's a treasure. That's a treasure that I really, really appreciate. So for me, this certificate refined my professional identity, strengthened my confidence, really. Now I'm still a coach. I'm still facilitating for workshops, but I'm also a teacher of a certificate program inspired by my professor, Ben-Shahar, and by a genuine desire to spread well-being and happiness through education. So that's it. I mean, thanks for listening, and I really want to communicate how special is our community and how special is the Spire model. And our community, we're always ready to welcome new friends, and we want more people to keep spreading happiness together.
Mhm. Thank you, Kati.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you.
I just want to build on what you said. Again, I'm always so moved to hear a community member talking about the things that they're doing, and I was especially moved when Kati invited me as a guest lecturer to her to the class that she was teaching, and to see those the students who were learning from Kati about enhancing their levels of happiness, about spreading happiness, just is so meaningful and so powerful. And the second thing that Kati mentioned was about the community. You know, the easy part about putting together the certificate program or the master's or the PhD for that matter, the easy part is the content. Really, the content is amazing. But how difficult could it be when you have the different disciplines to draw on, and the greatest thinkers in history? So we draw on Lao Tzu and Aristotle and Helen Keller, and more recently of the researchers in Sonia Lubomírsky and Martin Seligman, and we draw on research from neuroscience and the greatest movies and economics. Easy to find good material. I mean, our biggest problem is, what do we leave out because it's only a year-long program? So the content is great and it's easy. What's been more challenging, and I think the thing that is the most important thing about the Happiness Studies Academy and participating in the certificate program, is that you become part of a community. As Kati mentioned, a community of like-minded and like-hearted people committed to making our world a better place. And how do we create this community? Well, the community members created this community because it was an initiative of the students to create the Alumni and Business Club, ABC, that Yuval mentioned. And that community meets around the world in homes, just, whether it's, last week was a group met in Miami, before that in France, in Vancouver, in Shanghai, all over the world. They're meeting as we speak. There are probably groups meeting somewhere around the world. And it's this community that gets together every Thursday, or part of it for the live webinar, as well as for the retreats. You see, when we put together, and I'm going to tell the story, but before I do, if you have a question, put your hand up. This is how, raise hand below like this, and I will call on you. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. How did we create this community? So when we founded the Happiness Studies Academy, we sat down and we talked about, so what do we want this to look like? And we were debating, and it was a serious debate between having an online community, offline in one person. We actually thought of, maybe we can buy a place and, we'll all get together. Or do we create some form of a hybrid where the education includes coming to a specific place and in addition, online? And we're debating and debating, and eventually we decided to go 100% online. And this was pre-COVID. Obviously COVID made this a necessity. But pre-COVID, we decided 100% online. Why? For a simple reason. We wanted to reach as many people as possible. And we did reach many people. We have students from over 100 countries, which is amazing. And we love it. At the same time, what we didn't love is having to give up a lot of the benefits of face-to-face interaction. Yeah, when you're online, you can emit oxytocin, the love hormone. But when you're together in the same room, more oxytocin is released. No big surprise there. So there are real advantages to interacting in person, playing in the same sandbox. Which is why what we decided to do was to create retreats. And as you've all mentioned, we have 2 retreats a year in different places. These retreats are 100% optional. So no student need ever attend any retreat. Many choose to. So you can complete your certificate program or your MA or your PhD 100% online. And you have an option if you want. And this option is open while you're a student or when you're an alum. You can attend a retreat anywhere in the world. So we've had retreats in the last one was in Rio, in Brazil. The one before that was in Finland, Lapland. The one before, we had in Lake Como, we had in Shanghai and Beijing. We had in Miami and New Jersey and Mexico and Colombia, literally around our global village. And whoever can, attends those retreats. Communities formed communities are formed around those retreats, but not only. A community is formed also because we meet on Thursdays, and because students meet in person wherever they live. So there is an HSA chapter in Vancouver. There is an HSA chapter in Beijing. There is an HSA chapter in New Jersey. There's an in Miami, in Sao Paulo, all over the world. And they meet in Colombia. They meet and they meet in person. I travel a lot. Wherever I go, I meet our fellow journeyers. It could be, for 3 hours just to chat so that we have that face-to-face interaction, which is also important. So this is how we create our communities. All right, so let me respond. I see a couple of questions online, but before I get to those, I'll just write it down so I don't forget. Matt, you have your hand up.
Hi, Tal. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
I can turn my video on too if you want.
Yes,
I
please.
am in lovely, freezing Minnesota right now, a balmy -20. But it's actually kind of a small world because I took your class about 18 years ago as a senior in college. I just wanted to say how formative it was for me and what a great impact it had on my life. And just want to say it's awesome to see you still doing the same things. And I'm sure everyone who's taking this is gonna have a great experience. Sorry, that's my daughter in the background now.
Amazing. Great to see you, Matt. Thank you for hopping on. Wow, nostalgic. So Matt, so I taught this class 18 years ago. Exactly 18 years, yeah, 2008. Um, and um, and people often ask me, Matt, so what's the difference between what you're teaching today and in fact, this is the question that I was writing down that's in the chat. What's the difference between what I taught 18 years ago and what I'm teaching today? So 18 years ago, I taught a class, as you know, positive psychology. And the difference between positive psychology and what I taught then and what I'm teaching today is the following. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, positive psychology focuses on psychology, the psychology of happiness. Happiness studies focuses on much more than that. It looks at positive psychology, and by the end of the certificate, you'll have a sound grounding in positive psychology, in the research. In the happiness studies also includes, in addition to positive psychology, philosophy. So you will read and learn about Aristotle, whom I consider the father of the field of happiness studies. You will also learn about Helen Keller, whom I consider the mother of happiness studies. You will read Lao Tzu, whose work is so important, really essential for understanding what an emotionally happy life means, or what emotional well-being is about. So you read about much more than you learn about much more than psychology. You watch and receive recommendations for movies that capture the essential elements of a happy life. That's one difference, but that's not the only difference. What you can do in a certificate program very often is not possible in an academic class. A, because a certificate program is much longer. It includes much more material. But second, because an academic class has to focus a lot more on writing academic papers or doing academic work. Now, don't get me wrong. The certificate program is deeply, or research is deeply ingrained in the program. As Kati said, the amount of research that our students are exposed to is significant. And there are exercises, and you learn about interventions, and you practice them. And it's a lot more applied. So as you've all mentioned in the video, there are two courses that make up the certificate. The first course is about the SPIRE model. It's about the theory of happiness, and it includes interventions relating to each one of the SPIRE elements or each one of the happiness principles. The second course is called Facilitating Happiness. And that is all about application. Yes, it has theory. Of course, it talks about research behind each one of the interventions. But it basically provides you interventions that you can use for yourself, that you can use for your family, if you're a teacher in your classroom or an employee with your colleagues, as a coach or as a therapist. So it's a lot broader than college class, or what you can do in a college class. Now, of course, when it comes to our master's program, we include everything that's in the certificate and even more because we have 2 years to work together. A PhD takes it to the next level. However, and here's another question from the chat. While you can, and many of our students do, move from the certificate program to the master's program because they enjoyed learning about happiness and they want to deepen their understanding. Many don't. You know, Kati chose not to. The majority choose to do the certificate and remain part of the community and continue to learn through that. Because the foundation that you get in the certificate is a strong one. And here is the question that I was asked. So what do you do with a certificate in happiness studies? And here's the answer. The answer is many things. So for example, if you're a manager, you will actually become a better manager with happiness studies. Why? Because we know from a lot of research that if you increase levels of happiness, even by a little bit, you become more creative, more productive, more engaged. You become more physically healthier. Teamwork improves. So all these things contribute to the success of an organization or the success of a classroom. We have many teachers taking the various programs. We have teachers in our PhD as well, but many taking the certificate program. Why? Because they know that they realize that they become better teachers when their students become happier, when they become happier. So it's effective for teaching. Therapists, we have numerous therapists taking our various programs. Not because you become a therapist if you graduate with a certificate or with a PhD, you don't. But if you are a therapist, you'll become a better therapist with these tools in your toolbox. We have mayors taking our program and instituting the fundamentals of the SPIRE models citywide. We're now looking into a more systemic approach towards creating SPIRE cities. We have students who've created SPIRE schools or SPIRE classrooms. We have a program on SPIRE yoga, which is incorporating these ideas. We have students, and here I'm answering one of the questions here. We have students who are 18, and we have students who are in their 90s, literally. We have students who are working full-time and students who have retired. We have students who are homemakers, who are working full-time as parents. And we have students who are working as lawyers, medical doctors, introducing these ideas in the hospital or clinics. So the sky's the limit. Why? Because happiness is a human need. And when you increase levels of happiness, of well-being, every single area in your life will be impacted. All right, let me go to the chat and see if there are any questions there. Here we go. Okay. So I answered this question about is it theoretical or applied? There's a lot of applied content, and let me put it very bluntly. I would not be teaching this certificate program or MA or PhD if it were not for its practical value. Yeah, I'm very interested in academia. I love learning. But I would not put in the effort that and neither would my colleagues put in the effort that they put in to make this happen if it was just for theoretical value, because it's interesting, which it is. The main reason why we're doing this is because we know what a difference it can make. We've seen it. I've seen it in Kati's class. I've seen it in um, hundreds and hundreds of students' projects around the world. In fact, on World Happiness Day, one of the projects initiated by the ABC, the Alumni and Business Club, is to bring 100 happiness projects around the world by our alumni to do good in the world through some intervention. So whether it's in your family, whether it's in your classroom, whether it's with your coachees, your clients, the impact that this can have, that it does have, is remarkable. And that's why we do what we do. Brian.
Hey, how are you?
Hey.
Hey. Connecting from Israel at 2:15 in the morning. Um, Thank you so much.
Remember that, an exception is fine, but sleep generally is important for happiness. But I'm glad you stayed up and very grateful.
Okay, I appreciate that. Um, I'm picking up on the previous question you addressed in terms of I'm looking seriously at the master's program, and I know it's like the deadline for that is tomorrow. And originally, I didn't wasn't even aware there was a master's program, and I was just attracted to the certificate of happiness. I'm curious, it's fascinating to me that if I'm understanding correctly, the certificate of happiness is focusing on two courses that really are included in the master's, but focusing on them like over the course of a year. So does that mean we're going more in the certificate, it's going more in depth in those two classes, or just spreading it out and
Yeah, it's more the latter. It's spreading it out.
yeah.
So the master's pro. Okay, so let me explain the relationship between the master's and the certificate, because I know some of you are interested, are not sure um, about the difference and which one you're interested in. So the certificate program was created first. However, the master's program subsumes within it all the material of the certificate and a lot more. So even though the certificate is spread over 1 year and the master's program is spread over, almost 2 years, 20 months, it's a lot more than double the size of, because you'll be working harder in the certificate program because you have to fulfill the requirements of the accrediting bodies. So on average, the amount of work required for the master's program weekly is between 10 and 20 hours. For the certificate program, if you want to do it in a year, it's about, you can, get by on, 3 hours a week. Having said that, the certificate program, if you want, you can spread it over 2 years, or we had students just graduating from the certificate program after 4 years. And there's no problem with that. You see, because the certificate, you don't have to, submit papers, there are no grades. So, you can take your time with it and it's perfectly fine. There is no right pace. Many do it in a year. You can't do it in less than a year. Why? Because we think that there is value to the process, to the time that goes by. But you can do it in a year, or you can do it in 23 months, or however long you want to take for it. The master's, it's 20 months. And those 20 months are, much more demanding, of course, but it's an academic degree, so you'd expect that. The PhD similar, only over 4 years rather than 2. All the material in the certificate is included in the master's program, which is why if you decide to do the certificate and then after a year or after 6 months or after 5 years, you decide, I want to take this to the next level and do the MA. The amount you paid for the certificate is deducted from the cost of the MA. So you don't have to pay on top of it. You just complement the total price. You don't pay on top of it because we're not going to double charge you for the same material, of course. So they are related. The master's is much more in depth. If you're in doubt, take the certificate. You love it? Amazing. Join the master's. You think it's enough? Stop there. Again, our goal is to find the right fit for you so that you can make a difference in your life and the life of others. Does that answer your question, Brian? Do you want to?
I think so. I'm gonna do some meditating and processing in the minutes before I crash. I guess the question that occurred to me as a follow-up, and if it's too much, then feel free to ignore. And I believe that any effect I'm gonna have in the wider world is really gonna be only as a result of the transformation that happens here first. So I guess part of what I'm struggling with is if I'm looking to maximize my own personal growth or transformation, yeah, I'm trying to figure out like, okay, they both it's like, choice between good and gooder or or great and greater. I'm trying to figure out where it makes sense to yeah, that's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah. So, one of the main topics, Brian, that we talk about, and this we talk about it in the certificate and the master's, of course, is the difference between information and transformation. So if you think this is a distinction that Robert Keegan makes, which we teach, if you think about the word information, so you have a form, let's say the form is a box, and you put something in it. That's information. And you accumulate, and information is important, not belittling its importance. Transformation is about taking that same form and changing its shape. Change, move its shape. Now, why is transformation so important? Because what transformation means is that you can introduce the same information to the system and with very different results. For example, there's a challenging experience ahead of you. The information is that it's hard, that it takes you out of your comfort zone. That's the information. The transformation is, how do you look at it? Do you look at it as something that you embrace and welcome, or as something to be avoided at all costs? That's what I talked about earlier. The information is the same. The transformation is what matters for psychological health, whether it's in the form of resilience, happiness, or whatever you're generating. And the reason why the certificate program is a year, even though the material itself, if you decided to really, lock in and just work on that, you could go over the material in a couple of weeks, maybe. But we spread it over, and there are exercises so that it's not just information, so that you do work with that information so that you can experience transformation. If this program was just about information, Brian, I would not teach it. It's because it's transformative, because it leads potentially to real deep change. That is why we do what we do. That is why Kati does what she does. You can be sure of that. and so many of our graduates and students. Happy to take this conversation offline as well, Brian, if you want more information before you make your decision.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay. Let me just see a question. Again, if you have a question, you want to put your hand up, feel free. If not, then I'm going to read off the... Okay. So related question to what I've just been talking about. How does the program help shift or take you from general knowledge to daily rituals, to practices? And basically, I could rewrite this question as, how do you take information and make into transformation? So how do you take knowledge into rituals? So I want to introduce you to what I've come to call the 3 R's of change. The 3 R's of change. So if I asked you a question, I'm asking you a question now. Is it important for you to appreciate your loved ones, to appreciate the good things in your life, or do you prefer to take it all for granted? It's a rhetorical question. It's even a silly question. No one would say, I've had enough of appreciating my loved ones. I want to take them for granted for a while. No, we all want to appreciate. And yet, most people, most of the time, take their loved ones and the good things in their lives for granted. Why? Not because we don't love them, not because they're not important to us, not because we're not smart. We're all of the above. Why? Because we forget. And it often takes an external event, sometimes tragic, to remind us to appreciate, not to take for granted. Illness, loss, and such. But why do we need an external event to remind us? Why not create reminders in our life? Reminders for the best version of ourselves, for the way we want to be and the way we want to live. Reminders, that's the first R. They can come in the form of pictures, I have them on my wall, or quotes, or certain words, or we can wear a bracelet as a reminder. For example, a reminder to appreciate rather than take for granted. A reminder to be kind, central pillar of relational well-being. A reminder to move and not be sedentary for too long. So that's the first R of change. The second R of change, it's not enough to do it once or twice. We need ongoing reminders. In other words, we need repetition. The second R. And when we introduce reminders into our lives, coupled with ongoing repetition, that's when we get to the promised land of change, which is rituals, the third R. Reminders, repetition, rituals. And when we create those, and we need time, because repetition, by definition, requires that we do it over time. That's when we turn knowledge into habits. Understanding into deep change. Information to transformation. So the 3 R's of change is another tool, technique, approach that we take over the year or 2 years or 4 years or lifetime to bring about lasting change, to bring about transformation. Okay, so if you have other questions, please email us at info@happinessstudies.com. happinessstudies.academy. That's info@happinessstudies, all one word. I will write it in the chat in a minute. .academy. And what I'd like to do now to end this session is to show you a video so that you can get a sense of what our retreats look like. Again, you don't have to attend any, you can attend, we have students who attend them all around the world. Just to give you a sense of the community that that exists and what happens on these retreats. So here is a teaser, a taste. I will bid you farewell. Have a good night, and I hope you join our wonderful, precious community. Take good care, everyone. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever and whenever you are. Bye-bye.
To me, the word that comes to mind the most is connection.
Knowing very authentic and generous people from all over the world, for me, it was life-changing.
Get in here and you know you've got fantastic support in every which way possible.
And it's incredible the energy that we have here. Didn't expect such a level of preparation, and it is just mind blowing. You know, they treating us like princesses and princes, or like I'm coming for the best date of my life.
People hug each other, they smile to each other, they support each other, which is amazing because this is not something you can learn. Such a passion towards other people can only come if you have the happiness in your heart and that you care for other people. And the HSI community is the community of people who care for others.
Good night, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Bye-bye.